Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of From the Bench. Today, we're going to be introducing the whole podcast from myself. My name is Ethan, Daniel, as well as Matt.
Hey guys, I'm Matt, co-host here with Ethan.
Hey guys, I'm Daniel. I just fill in some blanks.
We're going to be talking everything hockey. We have stuff from the PWHL, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and so much more. So stay strapped to your seats and stay tuned for this podcast.
All right, so let's jump into it. The first thing that I really want to dive into, guys, and I really want to get Ethan's opinion on a couple of things here, and I want to hear from Daniel about some of it. So the PWHL Walter Cup champions, Minnesota. I wish we could say like the Minnesota blank, but we're not there yet. What a series! What a playoffs! Honestly, I loved seeing it from start to finish. What do you guys think? Ethan specifically, what do you think the PWHL accomplished in its first full season?
I think overall, if you kind of see the emotion of just women's sports entirely, if you can take a look at just even the announcers who are female, just crying and just seeing how this is impacting women's sports and not even just women themselves, just overall hockey. So now girls who I've also trained, especially my fiance, she's played minor hockey and say, "Where can I play? Because I can't play in the NHL." This kind of shows that you can be a teenage girl, play sports, and know, especially just hockey, and go, "I can play professional one day. I can be like Marie-Philippe Poulin. I can be just like her." Now you can't recognize just, I want to be Sidney Crosby. I can now be focused on how I can be Marie-Philippe Poulin. So I think this is a great inaugural season for the PWHL, and I can't wait for actually next season.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, when I look at what they did this season with some of the rule changes, building an entirely new league that actually draws a crowd. It was free on YouTube. I don't know how you guys, if you watched much of the playoffs or not. I watched it just on YouTube, and some games were better than the NHL games that were going on
Mm.
at the same time. I mean, there was just incredible playmaking, incredible speed, crazy talent. There might be little boys out there that look and say, like, I don't care about Austin Matthews. I want to be fill in the blank because I think the future is bright for a lot of these women. I don't think you're going to be just talking about one or two women next year. I think as the league grows, you're going to have draft after draft of competitive Olympic caliber women's hockey, which is, I don't know about you guys, but I love watching women's hockey at the Olympics. And this feels like that level of women's hockey night in, night out at a professional level.
Yeah, I don't think I can disagree with you there. I think you're kind of hitting all the points, especially if you take a look how Minnesota accomplished their victory. Like they have their first overall pick, who is the leading scorer last year in the NCAA, coming into professional, being the lead scorer in the professional hockey league for the PWHL, and then win an MVP and a trophy in her first year. And now it's Taylor Heisey, number 27 on Minnesota.
Yeah.
She is unreal, and I think she's also American
Oh,
born. So this shows a
she could
lot.
probably play in the NHL. I think. I mean, the wheels on her and the way that she moves the puck and just tenacity. And that's. I mean, it sounds like I'm just throwing hockey words out there, but really just an incredible athlete all the way around. I don't know if you knew this. Did you hear about NCAA athletes now being able to be paid by schools?
I heard about that. I understand there was a football player back in the day, destroying big YouTuber. Now he plays in the USFL, who's
Okay.
now a punter, and he dropped out of college so he can make YouTube money.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of athletes. So, I mean, back to hockey, it's one of those things where maybe we start to see women's hockey because there's no CHL equivalent for
Yeah.
women, that I'm really aware of. So we might see NCAA hockey for women become um, that that generating pool of talent. So, anyways, the PWHL Walter Cup champions, Minnesota. Congrats to them. But where do they go? Like, where does Minnesota go? Where does Toronto go? Boston? Where does the league go next year? Do they expand? Do they get nicknames? Do we see logos? I kind of want Daniel's opinion on some of this. I want to hear what
Yeah.
Daniel thinks about nicknames, logos, jerseys. What have you heard? What do you think? And is there an opportunity there to create, a really fun league around those brands?
Yeah, so I mean, if I can chime in on that, I'll start with what they've kind of said about expansion. They don't want to rush this. They definitely want to take it slower. I think even looking at their leading example, it's the WNBA, and the WNBA has actually had a lot of franchises fold.
Mm,
And I know Billie Jean King, who a very important figure in women's sports, she has a hand with this league, and she referenced the NHL's original six and kind of like the concept of just keeping things small, uh, making what we have now work before they think bigger picture. So I think that's the right approach, honestly, to take that, even with the WNBA kind of as a template.
right.
They had a lot of growing pains, and I think this league has the benefit of that as an example. I know different sport, but I think there's some things that they can take from what they've seen there and apply it to this. And I think keeping the six teams, especially with how close they are in proximity,
Yeah, I think
it's a
Minnesota
smart
is the
play.
furthest away from the others, right? Like,
Yeah, it kind of spreads it out. It's in smart markets. I know New York didn't quite have the best season in terms of attendance, but they were also playing in, I think, Bridgeport initially.
Yeah.
So
right, which
they're
is not. I mean,
now,
we have to be clear. That's not Manhattan.
No.
I mean, they're not playing at Madison Square Garden. Um, yeah,
yeah, I think they moved into UBS, which is where the Islanders play. So they're in Long Island now, if I'm correct on
Yeah,
that.
they played a
And
few games, yeah.
yeah, so I think already that's had a more positive impact. But overall, that's still a smart market to be in, a market you're going to want to be there for. So I think when it comes to the franchises, they're going to go slow and low. They're not going to be rushing on getting anybody in until they know for sure this is going to work. But I think from the first season already, we're seeing great numbers in terms of attendance.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, it looked
I
good. I mean, especially during
do
the playoffs, it looked like there were lots of games that had. I mean, I don't know if there were sellouts, but they looked like sellouts watching.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variance too in the facilities they're playing in. Some are playing in NHL arenas, some are playing in AHL arenas, and it
Right.
looks like they even trade up and down between facilities depending.
What's available? Like I know Toronto, the Toronto team was playing out of the Marlies facility, right? At least for some of the playoffs.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I recall. Yeah.
I think they
So
played
it's
there at the
interesting.
beginning season in University of Toronto's rink for a little bit.
Oh, okay, I mean those are massively different sized arenas too,
Mhm.
right? So
Yes.
the crowd you get is completely different for those. What do you think about team names, logos? What's the word? Are we going to see? And I know, I mean, there's hockey fans out there that are like, we don't care about the PWHL. And I guess why we're starting with this is because I think you should. I think hockey fans should care about this league. I
Yeah,
think if
big
you if
fan.
you like the sport, you care about the sport, you want to see it grow, you should care. But
Oh,
more
yeah.
importantly, if you just want to watch good hockey, you should care about this league. So do you guys have any I honestly I've heard nothing about team names. I know it's been, kind of rumored for a while since they announced that they weren't going to have them in season one. What's season two look like as far as branding go for the six teams?
So I do have some info on that. So they did announce that Bauer's going to be taking over uniform manufacturing. I think it was SK that took over around mid-season, but they actually have a contract now. The intention is to roll out team names and whole brand identities going in with that deal. There have been filings done. I do have some of the names here. So
Yeah, if you have
nothing's
those, I'd actually be
certain.
super just for myself. Hopefully, there's some people out there that are interested in them because I think that's part of the exciting piece of this league is seeing it grow from the ground up and seeing these teams be created.
Yeah, so I have the filings and the names here. So we're looking at Toronto Torch, the Montreal Echo, the Ottawa Alert, Minnesota Superior, Boston Wicked, and the New York Sound.
Interesting. What was Minnesota
So
again? I'm so sorry.
Minnesota Superior.
Superior.
So I
Is
noticed a
that,
lot
are
of
they
these.
on Lake Superior? Is that why?
I can't think of the geography play
We're gonna
there,
get
if that
crucified
is or
because
not.
I don't know this. And I've got Google in front of me, but I'm not gonna type out a bunch of things and click clack on the keyboard. But those aren't bad. I mean, you know what? I think I need to see the jerseys that go along with some of those, but at least they're not just recycled like men's hockey team names. Like they're all unique. I've never heard any of those in hockey before.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah, the thing I noticed too is none of them are plural, so they kind of go more off that like Thunder kind of name, and
Right.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I feel like the names could be stronger, but brand identity could make up for that.
I mean, it's kind of like
There's
Kraken, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So along those lines, now it has been rumored there is potential for some of the colors to maybe alter a little, but I wouldn't expect too many changes in terms of kind of the colors you're seeing on the ice.
Okay. Could we see a redesign of the jerseys?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like right now, it's not quite one size fits all, but there's kind of a standard across the board. I would
Yeah,
fully
yeah.
expect unique logo identities to follow with the name. It won't
Will we
just
see
be
something?
city
Do you
name.
remember when Reebok, like the Reebok Edge system came out and there was like basically a template for all 30, what was it, 30 teams at the time? And like every jersey was just like, Dallas was just the same jersey as Carolina practically. Just they swapped the colors and logos. Like, is it that we're going to see, or is it going to be more? Each team is going to have an opportunity to individually brand itself and have something different.
So that I don't have much clarity on. I mean, with Bauer, I'm not as familiar with kind of their modern efforts in terms of what teams they handle. So
Mm.
I'm not even familiar with if they have a template system in mind to roll out for this
Interesting to
particular
see. I mean,
league.
Bauer potentially will come out with something and say, "Here's a template," and especially in a small league, you've got six teams, and a limited budget. I would think compared to the hockey operations of the 32 NHL teams or 33 franchises. Sorry,
Yeah.
Arizona. Really, really sorry.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see if they roll it out similar to what they have now, but maybe introduce logos. But I'd like to
Mm.
think this would be a chance to maybe differentiate the teams a bit more in how they all look. And I would assume too that Bauer's also going to take over some of merchandise and not just on ice product. I'm curious though if they ever end up with a Fanatics partnership. It seems inevitable. There's so many
It
leagues,
does
whether it's
feel.
lacrosse, NFL,
Mhm.
NBA, NHL, of course.
Can I go and buy like a Minnesota jersey right now? Is that possible? Do you know?
You
Yeah.
are able to purchase jerseys.
Okay.
Honestly, actually, when I checked earlier in the season, I was looking at the Toronto jerseys and they actually sold out.
I see them
Yeah.
at the games, right? Like when you're watching them on TV, but I'm like, is that only at stores? And like, are they only at like where do you buy? Is it only online? Is it because that's something.
Online through the league website. You can definitely
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
apparel
personally,
there.
you know what? I'll declare it now. I like Minnesota. I wanted Minnesota to win. Starting at the beginning of the season, I think they get the cooler colors than the rest of the league, and they kind of sit outside geographically. The rest of the league is kind of centered around the
Mhm.
NHL, like original six kind of territory. Um, so for whatever reason, I'm drawn to them. I kind of dig the purple, so
Yeah, it's a
hopefully they
sick
don't
jersey.
change too much about that.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
big fan
one
of
thing
Montreal. I got a
I think for
Montreal
me,
jersey. Sorry, I
Toronto
keep cutting you
is.
out.
No.
Oh no, that's okay. I think Toronto's the team I kind of resonated with. But one thing I really feel like adding into the conversation is the fact that man, the talent is so good between each team. Like, I don't feel like if you were to tune into any of the games like I was throughout the season, I never felt like I was watching a dud game. It's
Right.
incredible how each lineup is.
Well, and maybe this plays into them wanting to go slowly with expansion. I, you don't expand if you don't have the talent pool yet to add a seventh or eighth team that is at the same caliber as the first six, right? Like you don't want to deteriorate, and I don't. This happens in the NHL. Like this was a concern about expansion in the NHL as well. You don't want to deteriorate the quality of the product, so you want to build up those farm systems and allow more women to become professional hockey players, and then you can add team 7, team 8.
Yeah, I definitely think that plays some of the cards in those decisions. I would argue, though, definitely more a concern just with like attendance and making sure those markets just simply
Right.
work. But yeah, if anything, it's almost like just a small benefit that comes with their strategy. The rosters are going to be stacked.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we saw that, especially in the playoffs when it got down to the last two teams, Boston and Minnesota. It was anybody's game. Like it was incredible to watch. So before we move on from the PWHL, thanks for tuning in so far to the first episode of From the Bench. I want to talk about rules, things that the PWHL did this season that I really liked, that I think the NHL should do. So I think the NHL should learn from the PWHL, and I'm going to toss you guys three things. You guys chime in, let me know, and then we're going to move on. We're going to go into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but let's get this out of the way. You guys ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yep.
All right. Jailbreak penalty kill.
I'm into
What do you
it.
think? I think that's a win.
I'm into it.
I
I like it.
It's a good change. Yep.
Yeah, that's no brainer. It adds such an extra element of don't mess this up, don't lose the puck. You can't settle for less. I think that's such an exciting ad, and if you're trying to gain new watchers to the sport, something like that just makes it kind of so much fun. Second thing, penalty shot changes. I'm going to call it the Oshie rule. And also the best of 5. But they allow any player to take as many penalty shots or as many shootout attempts as they want, and their shootouts after overtime are best of 5. Do you think the NHL should implement either of those things?
No. I'm pretty clear on that one. I think the Oshie rule is
that was
kind
a
of cool.
definitive no. I mean, I'm still waiting on Daniel though. It sounds like he's thinking it over here.
That's tough. I mean, honestly, I think I don't know if I have an answer on this one. I've yet to really even see shootout formats that are good. I mean, overtime's just.
Yeah, I mean, we
I
can
don't know the
probably
best
all
way to
agree.
solve that.
Don't enjoy shootouts. It's not how I want to see a hockey game end.
Exactly.
But what I'll say, if you're gonna have a shootout, which is already a best of your individual talents, why shouldn't TJ Oshie take all of those shots? Why shouldn't Jake Gensel, Sebastian Aho, can you tell who I cheer for, take those shots? If you had Austin Matthews on your team, is he not taking those penalty shots?
No.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got one more for you.
Balancing of
So
that, it's strange to think of.
the one thing that I'm going to say, as a goaltender, I would love to have one player keep shooting over and over again, fantasy, yada yada. But I want to see the skill of the other players. Yes, Austin Matthews, yes, Sebastian Aho, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid. What about those Zach Hymans, those David Perrons, those ones who slide underneath the radar, who can win you games as well than your top superstars? Right?
Hey, maybe that's the guy that takes 5 of those penalty shots if he's on the groove that night.
Exactly.
No, that's fair. So moving on, the last
glad
thing
you brought
I think
those names up.
Yeah.
those secondary scoring guys.
Yeah, they need a shot too, rather than your big names.
Wow. Look, in today's NHL, those guys get paid just as well as anybody else, better than most guys.
Yeah.
So
yes, they do.
finally, 3-2-1 point system. 3 points for a win, 2 for an OT loss, or 2 for an OT win and 1 for an OT loss. Does that make sense? Did I say it right? A 3-2-1 point system. So instead of 2 points for a win, it's 3 points for a win. Huge implications to the way standings are calculated. I like it. What do you guys think?
I think I like it.
I like it, yeah.
All right, we got a winner. I like it. All right, so we're going to move on. I want to talk Stanley Cup playoffs. and I want to talk who you got.
Alrighty.
So let's talk Rangers, Panthers. It's even right now. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think we could have asked for a better
Time to
conference
record, yeah.
finals, unless maybe your favorite team was in there instead of Team X. But Rangers, Panthers, Ethan, give us your expert pick. Who's going to win that series?
Oh man, I gotta bring it back to the goaltenders, baby. Oh man, the goaltending wise, I think they have the best on best right now. You got Bobrovsky and you got Shudurkin going on back to back. I really think Florida will come out on top in this series. There's a few reasons why. I think just playoff experience. Florida has that with Matthew Tkachuk and Brandon Montour. They've been in situations like that. They've obviously been to the conference finals before. While with New York, they're still a younger team, but they've also built a great core with their goaltender, their defenseman, Jacob Trouba, Mika Zibanejad. Obviously, he's been in a few playoff rounds himself, but something about Florida is coming to me that they're going to skim through this like they did a few years ago.
Oh boy, oh boy. You know, what's funny about this is I think we talked a couple of weeks ago and you said Florida's going to win this. And I don't know if you said 5 or 6 games. You didn't think it was going the distance. Now you think it's the Panthers. You know what? I've also flipped. I don't think the Panthers have it in them. I think New York is a team of destiny. This is a team that from top to bottom, through their goaltending structure, it doesn't matter who they play. They play really incredible hockey. Have they had periods and stuff where they have not been the dominant team? Yes. But they're built for the playoffs. They're built for success. Alexis Lafreniere has
On fire.
finally become the NHL player that New
I
York
love
Rangers
it.
fans
Yeah.
have wanted, have dreamt about when he was drafted. I mean, sure, we could talk about the disappointments, Kako, but ultimately, Shesterkin is the best goalie in the NHL, day in, day out, for we'll say 82 games. I know he doesn't play all 82, but for 82 games, he's the number one guy in the playoffs. He comes up big when it matters. I think he gets in the other team's head. So you know what? You're wrong. I think the Rangers are taking it. I think it's going 7 games, and I think we've got some more overtime games. But I think the Rangers are coming out on top. In fact, I'll go ahead and say I think the Rangers are winning the Stanley Cup. I don't want them to. I'm sorry, New York Rangers fans. But I don't think they're winning. Or sorry, I think they're winning the Stanley Cup. Anyways, we'll go on to the next one. Covered that one. Beating that horse to death. Stars, Oilers. Who you got? Expert pick.
I'm gonna take goaltending out of this one. Goaltending has been pretty horrible on this one.
Yeah.
Well, damn. Oilers were in a bit of a situation in Game 3. As you see, they had a 2-goal lead in the first, and they kind of went downhill on that. I think the Oilers are a bit inconsistent. The same thing with the Dallas Stars, which makes this a little bit of that even tilt going on. But I have the Oilers going through this. They have ways to score. They have few guys who can do it. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard, Zach Hyman, just to name a few. They know how to put the puck in the net. They'll find when there's a will, there's a way. When there's Connor McDavid, it's going in the net. So the Dallas Stars has a good grit to them, which I do like. I like the heavy hitting side of the
Grit
Stars.
wins cups. Grit wins cups.
Yes, I do like the grit of the Dallas Stars. I like how physical they are. I'm a physical guy. They're big, they're strong. Now Tanev is out. He has now a boot on his leg, so I won't see him probably coming back this series or even for this playoffs. So
Yeah, he might not be back in the playoffs.
so I have a great.
So you're taking the Oilers.
I'm taking Oilers. I think Oilers, and I'm gonna say 6 here.
Oof, no. Okay, I'm sorry. I got to disagree again. I was hoping we'd find some agreement here, but Dallas was the third best team in the regular season for a reason, right? Out of the 4 teams still playing hockey, 3 of them were the best in their division, and there's a reason for that. The Oilers, they're good, but they're stacked up top. They don't have the grit. They don't have the goaltending. They don't have the defense. Dallas is going to walk all over them with or without Tanev. I honestly, I don't think the Oilers have much more than 2 games left. I think Dallas wins the next 2, and they're the first team to move on to the Stanley Cup Finals. Dallas is another team that right down to their goaltending. I know you took goaltending out of it. I'm going to throw it back in. They're stacked everywhere. They're a solid hockey team, and Matt Duchene is playing like Matt Duchene again.
Mm,
I like it. I like what I see.
that's fair. I like Jake Doncher too,
So
but just a little shaky playoffs right now for him.
fair. So I want Daniel's take on those. Daniel, do you want to chime in and tell us who you think are going to win the East and the West here in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Yeah, so I think in the East, for me, I am going with the Rangers. I think it is a
Ooh.
beautifully balanced team. I honestly, I'll agree with Matt. I think that's the team to win the cup. It's just beautifully built. Now, I can't dog on the Panthers. It's just a great matchup, but I really think New York has what it takes to really get the full way there. If I'm looking at the other matchup, I mean, I think a lot of people even slept on the Stars. Like, I love the team Dallas has. What I'm gonna say though, and this is where, see, this is why I'm not the pro pick. For some reason, I have a gut feeling that Edmonton's gonna squeak by somehow.
Yeah,
I think
Ah,
it's gonna
it's a
be
little more
cheeky.
even than you think. Yeah, it's a little more even than you think on that side. I think Dallas is the better built team in
so
terms of
what?
all
The Oilers
roundedness,
just
but
do it on the back of Draisaitl and McDavid like they always have?
No,
but
Oh
that's
wait, they haven't done it before. I don't buy it. I think Dallas is a better team.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's where I'm conflicted. Is like I know on paper that just simply is the better team, but I feel like with the playoff momentum, Edmonton's gonna squeeze by somehow. It's just a gut feeling. I'm not saying it's logistics, but you know what? Gut
That's
feelings
fair.
have paid off in fantasy.
Well, I mean, luckily we are recording, so we will come back and we will have to double check and see who was right and who was wrong. Somehow,
Yep.
I feel like we will find a way for all three of us to be wrong, regardless
Yes.
of what
yeah,
the outcomes
exactly.
are. So I have
Exactly.
another question on the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we might get ripped apart on this because I think we're going to spend less time on the Stanley Cup playoffs than we did on the PWHL.
Yep.
But there's a reason for that. We covered the whole PWHL,
Mhm.
and we're only talking Stanley Cup playoffs. There's even more after that. So for now, did the playoff format, and again, my bias is going to show here. Did the playoff format, the way it is today, eliminate better teams that should be in the playoffs, that should be playing, that got eliminated because they had crappy matchups too early? Or is the playoff format perfect? Did the NHL nail it and we have the best playoffs we've ever seen?
All right, let me take a look at this right quick. So I have now the NHL standings in my hand, and I'm also going to have the wild card standings in my hand. So if I take a look at the league standings, there is no way in hell Washington shouldn't have been in this playoffs if we went by actual standings. Uh, by
Mhm.
the looks of things, I think the format that we have currently is fair. It makes sense. I'm glad we're not doing anything like the NBA, like a play-in, which is kind of
Mm,
nice. But
you know.
there's a few teams that could have maybe squeaked by with the wild card, but I think currently, I think it's fine. It's fair. It just makes sense.
All right. All right. Daniel, I got to get your take on this. Do you think the way that the NHL chooses its playoff teams is the way to go forward?
Call me old school. I haven't been a fan of the wild card. It just kind of like the old way. I
I hear
get
you.
the exciting part of a team sneaking in, but then when you see them just get obliterated in that first round,
Teams
I
used
don't
to
know.
sneak in.
That's not that exciting. And obviously, you could still be in eighth, and that's technically you could say still sneaking in. But I feel like there's teams that maybe have not as much business being in the playoffs, kind of getting in, and I don't know. I like
I
the
think
old
that's
way.
fair.
Maybe that's just
I
me.
I like the old way too. When I look
Yeah.
at the way that teams made the playoffs before, it was well, not always exactly, but it was the best 16 teams. Best eight from the
Yeah,
East, best eight from the West. Now, maybe you could argue that there were a couple of teams in the West or the East that shouldn't have made it over another team. But geographically, I mean, you got to play somewhat close to home for a little bit. You can't, cross the country every second game, um, just because you were further apart in the standings or whatever. So I like the way it was. I think 1 through 8 for each conference is the way to go. I'd love to see it change.
yeah.
Not a fan of the current structure. If it was purely based on the best teams from each division, but the wild card completely throws that out the window. It's no longer a best of each division. It's just, um, I guess, the best 3 teams from the division, and maybe the fourth best, maybe the fourth best from the other division.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
The
Change it.
Yeah,
Go back to the way it was,
I'm with
or
that.
I don't know, find something else. Personally, don't play with what wasn't broken. They never should have changed it in the first place.
with the
100%.
standings that I currently have, every team that was in the playoffs would have been in, besides Washington. So if we add that 16 team in, it would have been St. Louis Blues.
So who would have made it? Oh, St. Louis. Okay. You know what? And I'm just going to throw it out there. I would have rather see St. Louis play anybody than watch Washington play New York.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page there. So, Stanley Cup playoffs. I think we've talked, a little bit about it. There's not much more to say. We're going to keep monitoring. We're going to keep seeing, as the playoffs go, who wins these games. It's a tight tilt either way on both sides of the league right now in the East and the West. Any of these 4 teams could be a Stanley Cup champion.
Mm-hmm.
Any of them probably you could argue deserve to be a Stanley Cup champion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go out and say that I think that our current playoff structure, though, it really does make some of the best hockey played in the first and the second round. You might get for every Washington for New York first round, there's a Carolina New York second round that should have been the conference finals, in my very biased opinion. So, anyways, change the playoffs. Gary Bettman, he and I are really close, so I know he's going to listen to this. Whether or not he listens to me, the guy's got a mind.
Love you, Gary.
Gary's the man. Don't come at me. All right.
And canceled.
So there's 4 teams playing for the Stanley Cup, but that means that there's 28 other teams that are not playing for anything right now besides what they look like next season. So let's dive into teams that are already in off-season mode. Let's start with the top jobs because there's at least one of those available, and that's in Carolina. So Don Waddell stepped down as the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes directly after signing Rod Brindamore to a 5-year contract extension. Rod and his staff, Rod the Bod. Now Waddell is the general manager, president of hockey operations for a division rival, Columbus Blue Jackets. So Carolina needs a GM. So one, who's going to fill in Carolina? Did they have an interim GM? Is that the guy? Is there anybody available? What does that look like? Why did he leave? And how is he going to fix Columbus? So I really, I'm going to throw a curveball on everything. I want to hear from Daniel because I don't think Daniel gives 2 shits about Columbus or Carolina. So tell me, Daniel, why did Don Waddell leave Carolina?
That's a good question. As someone on the very outside, Carolina, I'm going to be honest, that is not a franchise I keep my eye on. I'm very in my business when it comes to the Jets, and I know we'll get to that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know if I got the answer, especially not Columbus. Columbus,
it's interesting,
like
right?
a distant memory.
You go from a contender to Columbus. I'm sorry, Blue Jackets fans, y'all are lovely folk, but the cannon's really aggressive and your team has never been good. So why Columbus? I got to know. Ethan, chime in. Why Columbus? Why did he leave? And what's Carolina do here?
I think personally speaking, Carolina already has a filled team, so there's not much I think he could really do at that point. Maybe add a little bit of pieces here and there, but I wouldn't know a fair reason why he would leave with a team that could potentially win a Stanley Cup next season with just doing simple little minor trades and maybe some motivation changes. But I don't have a single clue why you would go to a market like Columbus. It's a bit different than Carolina, of course, but I would have no idea. It's just like if I was GM of Toronto Maple Leafs and decided to work for the Boston Bruins for some odd reason. But
Yeah,
it, it
it's an odd one. Yeah,
it's
I mean,
a
at least
unique
Boston has a
situation.
reputation of being good. I think I can answer some of the questions. I wanted to see what you guys thought. Um, so we'll skim through this. Carolina is in an interesting position. Who do they bring in as a general manager first and foremost to replace the guy that built a contender? They were, if people might not remember this, Carolina hadn't made the playoffs until Don Waddell became the general manager and Rod Brindamore became the coach. They hadn't made the playoffs in 9 or 10 seasons. I think it was 10 calendar years, 9 hockey seasons. They hadn't made the playoffs. It was brutal. So he leaves a team at a time where there's a ton of expiring contracts. I mean, we're going to get to free agency here in a minute. And there's a few Hurricanes on that list. Maybe he snags them for Columbus, maybe not. I think it came down to money for him. I think it was a chance to make more money in Columbus and have an opportunity to start from scratch again and prove he can do this one more time. This is getting older. I think Carolina, who knows? Internally, I think they'd be smart to keep Eric Tolsky, maybe not as a GM, but as an assistant general manager. And if they're going to hire from inside, Justin Williams is the guy. If they're going to hire from the outside, I don't know who's available that would take that job. I think it's a tough job. And that's not because the owner's cheap or anything like that, but I think they have a different value system than what other teams have. So I think that's why Don left. But how's he going to fix Columbus? What do you do? I mean, the first thing, as a Hurricanes fan, I'm sorry, everybody else, he's going to trade Jake Bean, obviously, on the blue
Yeah.
line because that's what he did in Carolina. But I don't know how Columbus gets better, really, even in the short term. But even in the long term, who do they trade? They feel like a disjointed group of guys that individually are pretty good at hockey, but none of them play hockey well together. So I don't know. Columbus, feel free to come at me. I don't have the answers for you. But I think a lot of trades. I think he's going to have to make a lot of trades. Any arguments there?
No, I think Columbus needs
Nope.
a change. I always keep forgetting Columbus as a team.
Yes.
We are so sorry,
Totally
Columbus. Like,
respect, but because I'm pretty sure they have a pretty good fan base.
yeah, I mean, look, I don't. They're not in any risk of moving, right? Like the franchise isn't going anywhere.
No.
But I do get confused when they have like a reverse retro that's red, but they're the Blue Jackets, But I don't think that has any correlation to how good or bad they are on the ice.
Yeah.
No, it looked good, but interesting for a team called the Blue Jackets and the meaning behind that.
It definitely didn't look bad, but I was questioning, the take. I get the reverse retro, but it was especially when you think
just
about what
done
the
the
history
light
of the
blue.
Blue Jacket means and what a red coat means for our American listeners. I know we have so many. Everybody's a fan of FTB, so really, I don't know. You know what? Talk to the experts. Find Frank Saravelli and ask him how Don Waddell fixes Columbus. But outside of some massive trades, collect some draft resources and start making draft picks that aren't awful. I don't know
Yeah.
how you fix that team.
By taking a look at Columbus, I'm just briefly taking a quick peek. Like they have Adam Fantilli, great player, up and coming star. They have Kent Johnson, another great star who's going to be coming.
Look at their blue line. Their blue line is incredible.
They have a really good blue line with experience with Eric Gabranson. They have Ivan Provanov,
Yeah.
Damian Saverson, Zach Werenski. So it's a good defensive core. Goaltending. What is going on there? Elvis
Actually,
Marklinkus, who is
I
there you
don't
go.
need to make the sound myself. We have the sound for that. Their goaltending. I'm
Uh,
sorry, Elvis might be better anywhere else. No, I
yeah,
say their defense is awesome. Their defense is awesome on paper. The way they
yeah,
play
it's a
is
bit
not.
different. And if you take
Yeah.
a look more in the forwards, they got Cole Sillinger, which is Tate McRae's ex. They got Matthew
Dude,
Olivier.
I'm sorry. Let's just take a second. Tate is the GOAT. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for existing.
So I see why the horrible season, but I think Columbus-wise, you go for a goaltender. You maybe have to put Elvis Merklinkis on the back pedal, or you have to trade him away. Defensive-wise, you might have to kind of fit someone else in, take someone out. Maybe that might be a guy like Adam Boqvist, or take away Jake Bean and get some more veterans in there with Erica Brenson, kind of like
I'll
how
throw you a
Carolina
little.
did with Brett Burns.
Why don't I throw you a little trade ski here and see what you think? And
Okay.
then Daniel, I want you to chime in. Don Waddell, as the general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets,
Hmm.
trades, I don't know, Ivan Provorov, a draft pick, and gets from the Carolina Hurricanes, Frederik Andersen.
I don't think there would be a benefit that way for Columbus that way.
You don't think Anderson's better than the Merlinkins?
I think he is, yes, 100% as a former Maple Leafs
Maybe
goalie.
Elvis comes back as part of that deal to Carolina.
I
Is there a world where Don Waddell poaches players from Raleigh to come up to Columbus?
Potentially, because it's not
I
like it
could
hasn't happened
see
before.
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely has
I could see
happened
it.
before. All right. Enough about those guys. We're gonna move on. We've talked about the top job. Carolina needs a leader. They need somebody to inspire them. Columbus found their leader, but who's going to inspire the troops? Who's going to inspire the guys on the bench? We've got some changes, and the first one that I've got listed here, Berube in Toronto. I
Woo-hoo.
know that you're just dying here
Oh
to
yeah.
jump in, Ethan.
Oh yeah.
Let me know what you think. How is he going to handle the pressure? Not just the pressure of like, hey, you're coaching an NHL team, which he's done before,
Mhm.
but the pressure of the media. Everybody says Toronto media is, I'm sorry, the worst.
Oh,
That
it
it's the
is.
worst place to be. You're under the spotlight, under the microscope. How does he handle it?
This
And is he the
guy,
fix?
this guy is a Stanley Cup champion. Let's put that out there first. He can probably deal with the media. Yes.
Well, let's give him
Yeah.
a round of applause. He is a Stanley Cup champion. He is a stud.
He knows a way around media. He's a pretty chill guy. I think I'm gonna be the first F bomb of this podcast. He's a I don't give a fuck kind of guy, which is what Toronto needs. Um, if you take a look of the last coach that we had, he was just very open. He would say everything to media, which got him in trouble. Well, with this new head coach, none of that will be happening. Everything what's going to
Sheldon
be
Keefe
talking
felt
about.
like, like the really nice hockey dad that's like, oh, everybody's a
Exactly.
winner.
Not like he was a
That's what
bad
I got from
coach, but
Sheldon Keefe. Like, we're just a great group of guys.
exactly.
Sorry, I'm
And
sorry. I'm sorry. Sheldon Keefe is a good coach. He really is a good coach.
great coach.
Toronto's a tough market.
It's a really tough market. And I think for Sheldon Keefe, he needed to get out of Toronto. He did what he did for them. But with Berube, it's going to be a whole different change for Toronto. It's going to be a facelift that we really needed. More structured. But I think with that structure change, there's going to be line changes. And I can see a few changes coming our way.
All right. I mean, why don't we tackle it right now? There's been a rumor out there that Mitch Marner is, if not available, that he might be made available for the right team if it was of interest to him and the Maple Leafs.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't think of one of 31 teams that would not like to have Mitch Marner,
Mhm.
but of course, there's a price that needs to go back the other way. We've also just seen, a pretty bombshell photo report that Mitch Marner was at Starbucks in Toronto with Berube having a coffee and chit chat. Now, I've seen the picture. It didn't look like the kind of conversation I want to have with my boss.
No.
But
Nope.
let me know. Do they trade Mitch Marner?
So here's the questionable part. I am a big fan of the core four, but I'm also not a fan of Mitch Marner. That's a fun fact.
Are you a fan of winning the first round of the playoffs?
I'm a fan of actually winning. I'm a fan of actually moving on to an Eastern Conference Final, so I actually see improvement. But if I take a look at our team right now, we have so many players who are not playing in Toronto who could be playing in Toronto. We have Mark Giordano out for long term, John Klingberg out for long term. We just got back Lubushkin from a trade that before Arizona had to go somewhere else. Jake Muzzin, again, signed on a contract. He's not playing. So we're losing a lot of our veteran defensemen, which if we got rid of Mitch Marner, we're probably going to gain a younger, middle-aged defenseman and a few draft picks. And if I was Toronto, I will trade into Ottawa and get Thomas Chabot.
If Thomas Chabot's available, look, I think you're right. But when you list off those defensemen, I don't hear like a who's who of current NHL defensemen. I
Yeah,
hear we would have been good in 2018.
exactly.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
You got to get better on the blue line. I'm sorry. I think it's no secret in Toronto. Like we don't need to beat a dead horse.
Exactly.
Toronto's defense and their structure, they can score goals. There's no doubt. But
100%.
you got to stop them too, and you can't leave your goalie out to dry. Not that they don't even have a goalie. I'm sorry, they don't have a goalie that you can leave out to dry, let alone one that you can leave out to dry like in the playoffs.
And we have
Like
four
they don't have.
starters. How does that happen?
Yeah, but none of them are.
None of them
None
are
of them are
where they should
Chesterton.
be.
None of them are
Exactly.
Bobrovsky.
We have
Right?
Martin Jones, who's been to the Stanley Cup Finals. We have a two-time Stanley Cup champion with Matt Murray. We have a West Eastern Conference Finals tester with Ilya Samsonov when he was with Washington, and then we have
I know,
Joseph
but
Wall. But again, they're not playing.
I don't think those pieces, maybe with a real defense, and I'm not
Mm,
even saying the players are bad, and I'm not even saying that the coaching was bad. The combination of all of it didn't work,
no, it
right?
didn't.
Like that's no secret.
Yeah.
Everything was good on paper, like up and down Toronto's lineup. I think trading Mitch Marner brings you such a return just in the cap space that you free
Hmm.
up that you can now go and you can make some
Yes.
changes throughout your lineup. You're no longer top heavy. Core four sounds great, but there's a lot of money locked up in those core four. Can you afford a core four when you've got Austin Matthews?
Probably not, because Austin Matthews, once his contract's ended, I don't know if his future's going to be bright in Toronto, to be honest with you. They're
Well,
going to keep
his
losing.
future is going to be bright wherever he goes. I just
Exactly.
don't know. You're right. I don't know if it's in Toronto. Daniel, I need to get your take. I know you follow Canadian media a little bit more than I do. What's going on? Do they trade Mitch Marner?
I mean, I can't help but say it makes sense to. I think especially second year for the GM, you want to shake it up a little bit extra. I think knowing the holes in D and especially in goaltending, I mean, look, we named 4 goaltenders. I'm like, those are all great backups. They need a starting goaltender. It's one of those situations where, like, it's just clearly not working in the current format. I think Marner's the right guy to ship out. I just don't know where you target, what would really be available in the market, and who's listening on that.
Yeah, I don't even
In my
know.
head, I guess I position it more towards goaltending. I really think an all-star caliber goaltender is where they need to aim, but I feel
The
like Ethan might
rumor.
know a bit more in terms of maybe where they should position that more.
Well, I mean, the rumor has been Nashville for Saros, right? I mean, Ethan, what have you kind of
Yeah.
heard?
I've heard, like what you said, on trading Marner to Nashville. Reminder that what's his name, Ryan O'Reilly, has also is close friends with Mitch Marner, who also plays for Nashville, which would be a good target for Mitch Marner. But I seen a trade for Marner going to Nashville for Soros. I've seen some defensive stuff that might be going into the West Coast, more towards the San Jose slash Vegas area. So I have no idea, because you know how Vegas is. They'll get a star player, put them on IR for a long time, and win Stanley Cup.
Well,
So
right now, as it stands, Vegas has to move somebody, especially from their
exactly.
back end. I don't know how they make the salary cap work.
But for Mitch, I think he's going more towards the West Coast, or he's going to go towards Nashville.
Fair enough. I mean, so you're thinking Western Conference no matter what. So
I would think so. If we take a look at defensive players, all the great defensive players are all pretty much in the West that will be available in the short term, rather than if you look more in the East, they're all locked up for long-term contracts.
fair enough. So let's move on to the next bench boss. We got sidetracked. Dan Bilesma in Seattle. What can we expect? A change of scenery. Seattle has only had 2 seasons. They've already changed their coach. They didn't make the playoffs this year. Sorry, is this their third season? I'm losing track of time. Um, what does Bilesma mean to a club like Seattle and kind of a young club like Seattle? What does he bring and what does he do there that might change their fortunes next season?
I think a little bit of class, if you take a look at it. Obviously, he's a Stanley Cup champion again, another coach. Um, he just
Am I
knows how to
wrong?
win
Does
games.
he have two or just one
I think
Stanley
he
Cup?
has two with Pittsburgh.
I could be wrong.
I
Might be
think it's a
one
I
with
didn't
Pittsburgh.
research
single
that before we jumped in
single
here.
cup, but two finals appearances.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so
He also coached Team USA, did he
yeah,
not, in the Olympics?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's also a Stanley Cup winner, so it's going to bring them a little bit of experience, especially for those young guys. If you take a look at their young core, they're straightforward. They know how to win games. They've all probably played NCAA. If you look at Matty Beniers, he's a top goal scorer for a reason. So I think for him, it just brings a little bit more class, a good demeanor to kind of bring the young guys. Hey, stop doing this stupid Zero move. Let's actually play some hockey out there. So um, this is just going to bring class to their franchise.
Sorry, I'm laughing. I didn't have a chance. I was going to make a funny sound, and I was just laughing at that joke. So, yeah, Daniel, do you have any thoughts on Seattle?
Um, I think it's the right guy for the job. I mean, he handled a pretty young Pittsburgh team when they were
He
in their
did. If you
stride
remember
there. So
that was Crosby's first cup.
yeah, so I think obviously kind of different circumstances, but yeah, I mean, reputable coach. I think it's the right guy to put in there. It's so hard to say though. Seattle's still a very young team in all senses. They're still
Yeah,
building up. They're trying to go more long term, and I think it's the right call. They got the right guy.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to see it happen. Ron Francis is generally maybe I don't think it was a loyalty thing. I think it's the reality that you make the playoffs and you don't make the playoffs. No matter how new of a franchise you are, somebody answers for that, right? So
Yeah.
let's move on to the next one. Sheldon Keefe lands in New Jersey. New Jersey, a team that definitely underachieved this year.
Mhm.
He took an underachieving, if I remember correctly, an underachieving Toronto team, and he helped them achieve a little bit more than they did before he came in. Is
Mhm.
he the right guy in New Jersey?
I think so. I think New Jersey just needs a younger coach. They had a lot of older coaches in the long term, if you really think about it. And you take a look at the team now, they're all middle-aged guys. Well, Nico Hischier, he's not middle-aged, but like they're mature, they're young, but at the same time, they're not young enough where you need to add that demeanor. They need someone who's just going to lighten up the room, while Toronto needed the demeanor. Um, so I think this is a great move for the New Jersey Devils, and I think it should show.
Fair. Yeah. Any thoughts there, Daniel? I couldn't agree more with Ethan's take.
I think for me, it's harder to say. I mean, he went from the Marlies to the Leafs, so he was kind of in that Toronto system for a bit. I don't know how he's
Hmm.
going to do outside of this, so hard for me to say.
Yeah, that's fair. I
Yeah.
look at him and I see a guy that coach a lot of talent, and New
Hmm.
Jersey has a lot of talent, and he coached a lot of young guys. And I know what Ethan was saying. Like they're not rookies, and by middle age, you mean like they're guys that have played a couple of seasons in the NHL now. They're not rookies. They're not sophomores. Most of them are guys that have been around the block. They've played playoff games. Um, but I think they do need a different approach than Toronto. Like if I look at New Jersey and Toronto, they're almost polar opposites in terms of like post game interviews, their personas. New Jersey, I don't know, they're like the most fun team in the NHL, but there is not a lot of like pressure on New Jersey the way that there's pressure on um, Toronto. And I think Sheldon Keefe will thrive more in an area like that with a ton of talent to coach. I just think that's the right fit for him. And New Jersey is the lucky benefactors of him being available at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So
Say from there.
we're going to jump into a little bit of Winnipeg talk because I really want to know. This is kind of the last head coaching job that I've listed out for us. Daniel, dive into Winnipeg. What's going on? They made a coaching change and now promoted somebody to take on the reins going into next season. They're a team that were what, top of the league for a couple of weeks and finished just behind Dallas, 3 points behind Dallas in the standings. What does this mean in Winnipeg?
So I feel this is a bit of an odd situation. I didn't expect Bones to just retire. Um, I think what's good about the situation is Scott Arniel, who was one of the associates under Bones. Honestly, he's actually got a long tenured history. He was a draftee of the Winnipeg Jets. He also played for the Manitoba Moose. He's
Now
familiar
we're
with the
talking.
system.
He was a draftee of the Arizona Coyotes.
Yes. Thanks. Ay, ay, ay. You get it. You get it. Anyways, so I think he's just very familiar with the culture and that, especially just working directly under Bones for the past 2 seasons. Um, I think I don't know if we're going to see a big culture shift. Graduating him to the role, I think it's honestly it's a very classic Chevy move. So Cheveldayoff, who's been GM the whole time Winnipeg's been back, he
Yeah,
likes to
he was
keep
the
everybody very well
GM of
woven
the previous
together.
AHL team in Manitoba, correct? And
Yeah,
was
so and that's
promoted
the
up from there when the
thing.
transition happened in 2010.
A lot of the staff of the Jets and the Moose, they've all been interchangeable throughout time between the two franchises, so they like to very much promote within. I don't think too much is going to change. I'm curious how he treats the lines in that. I mean, what I'll say about that first round exit is a lot of people were upset with the lines that Bones had going into that.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think it's not going to be a big change of pace. Is I
Yeah,
think
I
the
mean, and
best
like,
way
did
to
the
say
lines
the
really lose you that
expectations.
series?
Uh, I
Or did
I
the better team
think
just win? Like, unfortunately for Winnipeg.
I'll argue they were running some different line combinations that were working better. I That's a tough one to say, and obviously I'm a fan, so I have bias in this opinion.
We've all got our bias.
Yeah, so I'm thinking there was a bit of line combination things that played its card, but yeah, obviously I think the offense of the Avs kind of very overwhelming. Um, but I guess back on topic, not a big change in pace is what I would expect going into the next season. I think the ball's still going to be rolling. There's a lot of respect in the locker room for Arniel, so it's just the right move. And honestly, the Jets have been so great at building up internal candidates going forward. They don't move the needle much when it comes to that, but it's not a bad thing. They built up so strong.
But they've never gotten past, like, they've never been in a Stanley Cup final. Have they
Not
been
to
in
a
a
cup
Western
final, but
Conference
a
final?
conference. Yes, they've been to conference final. They were
Conference.
edged out by Vegas.
Right. Yes. Yes. So I don't know. I think maybe it is time for a bigger change. I mean, I heard they were interested in Waddell for the GM position.
I don't know if changing out Chevy's a good idea. I feel like his drafting has been magic. Like the players we have on the roster, GM wise, I wouldn't be changing that.
Sure.
Coaching, I get the coaching change, but
All right.
I don't know. I'm looking at a pretty special team here. I get the first round exit,
I mean, I don't mean
but
to be mean. Is it a special team though if they're not really a cup contender?
I think considering the names they've worked with, they've done a good job, especially regular season. But yeah, I
Yep.
guess challenging the thought. Yeah, it's hard to say where they go from here. I'm curious what they do, obviously in the off season, but
I'd
all-star
like to see a big
goaltending, some
trade.
great offense.
Make a huge
Yeah,
trade, come out, bring in a stud, somebody who maybe has a tie to Winnipeg or is Canadian and is like, you know what, I will suffer through playing in the bitter cold to play for this franchise. I think they need a face of the franchise. I don't think they've ever had it, and I think that's what they're missing in Winnipeg.
I'm going to slide in
yeah. I
here right
mean,
quick, but
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
As rumored, I've heard Nikolai Ehlers might be leaving the Jets.
And he's the closest they've really had to a
Interesting.
face of the franchise.
That's what I've heard
See, I
from the
would
season.
I'd argue against that in terms of face of the franchise. I mean, Mark Scheifele. I would say
Yeah,
pretty
Scheifele
key
Hellebuck
is a
face.
as
Kyle
well.
fantastic
Connor.
guy, and I don't mean to downplay him as a hockey player. He is a fantastic hockey player who often flies under the radar.
Mm.
Like
Yes,
he reminds me of a
definitely a
Ron
bit under
Francis
the.
who definitely deserves way more credit than he gets. But I mean, a face of the franchise kind of needs to be like I mean, you're not going to get Austin Matthews, but maybe Sebastian Aho is a good comparison. Like you don't need the guy, you just need a guy.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I would even vouch Kyle Connor.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Again, I don't know. They have the star power that even a guy like Aho has, but maybe I'm in a bubble, right? Maybe I'm
Mm.
Winnipeg fans, wherever you're listening to this. If there is a comment section, please let us know. And before we end this thing, Ethan is going to give you some information, so you can always sound off and let us know how stupid you think my takes are, or any of our takes are,
To
or
be
all
honest,
of our takes.
I like the
And of
challenge.
course, fellow Jets fans, you can back me up if you think I got the right idea here.
Yeah, nobody's
But
back.
of course, it's hard to see because like I said, yeah, jeez. I don't know when you're a fan of a team. Yeah, I guess you get locked in. You feel like you know more, but I'm sure from an outsider's perspective, Winnipeg probably could seem like pretty small potatoes.
Mm.
They can feel that way sometimes, and
Yeah.
I say that from a Southeast Division perspective, that they still feel like the Atlanta Thrashers sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So all right,
Yeah,
let's move on.
like I want to hear that. I mean, if
We've
it isn't
talked
a
about Winnipeg.
Coyotes joke, it's
Honestly,
always a Thrashers joke.
I think they have one of the best logos in the NHL. And not just
Yep.
that, I think even their retro logo, retro jersey, is one of the best in the NHL.
Mm.
I want the best for Winnipeg. I would cheer for them over Edmonton. Yuck. So
Yeah.
Touche.
let's dive into some trade rumors before we get into NHL free agency. So, we've talked about the playoffs. We've talked about teams heading into the postseason and out of that postseason and into the offseason. There's been some rumors about some pretty big trades, depending on who you cheer for.
Mhm.
And you guys might have a few thoughts on different things you've heard. So I'm going to open it up here after I lay this one out. There's been lots of rumors out of Carolina that Marty Necas
Mhm.
and Jesperi Kotkaniemi are both available, and that if Kotkaniemi is not traded, he's going to be bought out. Those are the rumors. Carolina obviously maybe trying to recover a little bit from the fumble that was the offer sheet of Jesperi Kotkaniemi, but they're crunched for salary cap. So do either of these guys go? I tend to think Marty Necas is not long for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Mhm.
I think there's teams that want him as a centerman. I think he is a centerman. I think he's best as a center, but I don't know that he plays center the way that Rod Brindamore wants him to play center. So he's been a winger. So I think he's gone. I don't think we can afford. I say we. I don't think the Hurricanes can afford to keep a guy like Necas and sign like maybe some of their other big name free agents that we're going to talk about later on. So I want to know what you guys think. Does Carolina trade Martin Necas, who just, by the way, helped lead Czechia to a gold medal at the World Championships, or does Carolina, trade or buy out Jesperi Kotkaniemi? What do you guys think? And have you heard any of the names that have been floated around in these trade rumors?
So I'm going to touch on Kekiniemi. I think Kekiniemi will be bought out. Just more importantly is that they've done this big deal with Montreal to try to buy him and give him the contract that he deserved, and he came to Carolina, didn't do kind of his thing. I think if nobody picks him up, he will be bought out. And then for Marty Necas, I think Carolina's going to be more respectful on this. I think they're going to try to give him a shot with a contract if they can try to get it to work and somehow. But if it doesn't, I think he's gone. I think he will go to a respectful team that could have him. I think if you look at Vancouver, there's some spots missing. If you take a look at the Islanders,
There
there's some
was talk
spots
during
missing.
the season.
Yeah,
of Martin Necas to Vancouver,
yeah,
and the return would have potentially been in Elias Pettersson.
yeah.
Um,
He can fit in many rosters: Vancouver, Islanders, Ottawa, just to name a few. I think he'd be great in either of those, you know, teams. But I think Marty Antros
Now,
might be gone.
Necas' dad thinks he should be a centerman, right?
Hmm.
Of course, and he also thinks he should be on the first power play unit.
Hmm.
Everybody, everybody wants their kid to be number one
100%.
center
Yeah,
on the number one power play unit. But is the bridge burned? Is Waddell being gone maybe mean that there's new relationships and a new perspective on this? Does a team like Columbus now have interest in offer sheeting Marty Necas, or do they have interest in trading for a Marty Necas? Do they have the assets? Carolina's cash crunch. I mean, if
yeah,
they sign Necas, he's gonna be getting a raise, and he's probably gonna want close to $8 million a year.
yeah.
Even if that's a year or two, does that prevent you from bringing in some of the defensemen that you have? Does that prevent you from re-signing Jake Gensel? I don't know. It's definitely a question for the next general manager. And I
Yeah.
think with Carolina, we have to wait and see who takes that job to see what their priorities are. Tom Dundon, the owner, obviously very involved, but he's taken hockey advice from Hockey Minds. So that's why I don't think Eric Tolsky is the guy. I think they're going to hire somebody. And the first order of business is, do we trade or do we keep Martin Necas? And I think we'll know by the draft. I really do think, but that's been the big trade rumor, right? There hasn't really been a lot. We've seen some really minor draft trades swap hands and things, but that's been the only thing. And of course, as a Hurricanes fan, I love hearing about it. I love talking about it, and I think a lot of teams in the league are excited to hear that a guy like Martin Necas could potentially be available this offseason.
Mm.
Speaking of, let's dive in. Let's talk about maybe the most exciting piece of NHL offseason hockey talk, which is NHL free agency.
My favorite.
I've got a list, max
Yep.
top 10. Everybody come at me because this is the list.
It's a good list.
This is the list.
Oh, that's good.
You guys, I hope that you just completely agree with me. It would be terrible content, but it would make me feel fantastic.
I like the list.
So let's go through it. Jake Gensel, number one free agent on the market.
Yep.
What do you guys think? Is he the number one guy?
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
This guy can change a team. You see it in Pittsburgh. You
He
see it in
can change a team.
Carolina. I think whoever picks him up will be great, and I have a nice 2 cents will fit great in. But I'm gonna take my bias out of here. But I think out of all the teams Jake Gensel can play for, he'll fit very well with the New York Rangers.
Ooh.
Oh, they'd be deadly.
I'd cry if that happened. But you're not wrong. He would be great. I don't know how they'd make that salary cap situation work. I don't even know, honestly, because they're still playing hockey. I haven't looked at their salary cap situation.
Yeah, I
They've
don't
got a
know either.
few RFAs this offseason that are due for raises. I know that specifically on the blue line.
Mhm.
What do they do? Right? Do they prioritize their money differently? Is there a guy that goes on IR somehow, like teams seem to find? I'm not sure. He would be dangerous there. I think he stays in Carolina. I'm not just saying that
That's
as a Hurricanes fan. I think the money can work. I think he's
a great
Carolina's
option.
top priority. I've lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a fantastic place, and Jake Gensel, seemed to like it.
Yeah,
And sometimes the easiest thing to do is to stay where you are and to keep doing what you're doing and say, "I've got unfinished business." I think that's what happened. But I
yeah.
want to hear from Daniel.
In terms of where he goes, I mean, just to add to Ethan suggesting the Rangers, I mean, that'd be deadly.
Yeah.
I, I don't know if he goes anywhere. I think he might stay. Um, but I think in terms of, I don't know if I'm the best expert in gauging why to stay there specifically, but I mean, overall, actually just looking at your list here, like, I feel like you have them all ranked very appropriately.
Yeah,
Like, that's a
look,
good
it's no
list.
secret. These are the guys that are available. It's not hard to come up with and say these are maybe the top 10. I struggle a little bit making the order the way that I think it should be.
Yeah.
Um, well let's go through them. I'll list them. Jake Gensel, number one, right?
Hmm.
Sam
Yeah.
Reinhart, number two.
Hmm.
Elias Lindholm at number three. Steven Stamkos Marchessault, Pesce, Montour, Toffoli, Shea, and Duchesne. I think those are the top 10 guys that teams are going to want this offseason. Whether you're a Stanley Cup contender or you're a team that has money to spend and needs somebody, on your roster that contributes, those guys do it. Some of them in different ways. Like Montour and Pesce are not necessarily going to put up 60 points on the back end. They might not even put up 30 or 40 points on the back end, but they're going to shut the other team's best guys down, and they're going to be reliable guys all around. And they have offensive flair. A guy like Steven Stamkos, I mean, I don't even know if he hits the market, but if he does, that would be incredible. That would be the biggest free agent to hit the market, in my mind, since John Tavares.
Yeah.
Just in terms of reputation and what he's accomplished and who he is in the NHL. Gensel, Reinhart, no disrespect, nor to Lindholm, but Steven Stamkos is Steven Stamkos, right? I mean, he's played for Team Canada. If you're Canadian, which I'm sure not everybody listening is, but he is a rock star. He's a guy that lots of guys grew up saying, "I wish I could skate and score and be like Steven Stamkos."
No,
I think
do
it's
have
an
rumors
incredible.
on Steven Stamkos, though.
You got some rumors on Stamkos. Let's do it. We'll skip over the guys. Let's just go through the list a little bit. Tell me what you hear on Stammers.
So for Stammers, before we go back to Sam Reinhart for number 2, I heard Stamkos this offseason can land in other 3 markets, not including the Tampa Bay Lightning, which they could sign at a very low deal for him, just to keep him there.
I mean, look, they look like they might be running it back from a couple of years ago where they've already made a trade this offseason.
Exactly. But the top team on the list is the Detroit Red Wings. Number 2 on the list is the Montreal Canadiens. And number 3 on the list is the Nashville Predators.
Interesting. I could see any of that. I think Detroit is the most likely team if he's going anywhere. It's close to Toronto. Am I mistaken? He's a Southern Ontario boy.
Mm-hmm. I think Detroit is the best fit. If we were to say to pick one of the 4 teams, I think Detroit overall. He's done his stuff in Tampa Bay. It'd be great to keep him there as well to retire there.
He owes Tampa nothing, and I mean, Tampa fans would love to keep him, but he doesn't owe those fans anything now.
He's got them 2 Stanley Cups, but what's important is Patrick Kane is available too. I think coming up shortly too, and
Patrick Kane is available.
Yeah, he could stay in Detroit. And if you add Steven Stamkos on that league minimum contract or a little bit higher that contract, that team with Dylan Larkin will be that playoff team that I saw in Montreal the last game of the season win that game. That would have been sick to see because Detroit deserved that game. They deserved to be in the playoffs too.
I think they did deserve to be in the playoffs. I think Detroit, they're not, whatever. 2002 was a long time ago. But I don't know if Patrick Kane is the same Patrick Kane he was, but he still scores goals. Look, if Stammers went there and they kept Patrick Kane, they would certainly have a shot at, if not the wild card seat into the playoffs through the Atlantic. They might have a shot at one of the top 3 seeds in the Atlantic. But it's a tough division. A fun team. I mean, are they? Does he go to Detroit and then they knock out, Tampa Bay? I don't know. Right?
Like something.
That would be crazy. That would be a good story.
Blockbuster.
So let's go back a little bit. Sam Reinhart.
Yep.
I don't have a lot of thoughts on some of these guys. Some of them I have more thoughts on. He's going to be highly sought after.
Yeah, I think personally speaking, I think he's going to stay where he's currently at in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, why would you leave a team that has had so much success unless you just want a payday? And if they win the Stanley Cup, I could see him departing for a payday. If they don't, I think he stays. I think he looks at it and says, "Look, we've got unfinished business." I think that's a tight group of guys there in Florida, and I think they want to play together.
That's a win now team too. Even if they somehow win it now or they win it next year, it's a win now team. You can't take the block now and move them somewhere else. It's now or never.
Yeah, no, I agree. Them, Carolina, the Rangers. I would even say Edmonton is in that position, especially with Draisaitl potentially being on the move this offseason. Not that his Edmonton's going to retain his rights. Do they make a trade? I don't know. But
Yeah.
all right, so number 3 on the list is Elias Lindholm. Does he stay in Vancouver? Did he like his time there enough to stay, or does he look for a new home where maybe he's a little bit more important?
I think for me, I'm going to say the same thing with Sam Reinhart. I think it stays because if you take a look at what JT Miller said the other day in the interview with Sportsnet, um, the core there is there, the room morale is there, the winning, the excitement. They just brought back the love of the Vancouver Canucks in the city of Vancouver, so they got that feeling back. I think he stays, and if he leaves, any team will grab a Lindholm, that's for sure. If it's the Hurricanes, if it's the New York Islanders, or the San Jose Sharks, who also need some little power there, so he can pretty much land
He
any
is a
team.
right-handed center. He
Yeah.
is, somebody who would be highly sought after. Fills an important role.
Hmm.
Most teams would look at him as a number 2 center.
Yeah.
A guy that can contribute on your power play, is going to kill penalties for you.
Yeah.
A guy that plays big minutes, and that right-handed position is super important. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of right-handed centers that are available year over year unless you draft them yourself. I'm not sure what happens with Lindholm. I tend to think that he goes somewhere else for a payday.
Potentially.
But
Yeah.
I'd love to see him stick around in Vancouver. Vancouver's a
100%.
fun team to watch.
Especially with this playoffs, I was voting for them once my Leafs were gone.
So the rest of these guys, I want to go through. We've got
Yep.
6 more players,
Yep.
and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw you guys a name,
Yep.
and I want Ethan to answer, and then Daniel to answer, and all you're going to say is he resigns or he moves on.
Okay.
Marcia,
Okay.
so
Moves on.
Moves on.
yeah, I think so. I think first of all, I don't know how you make the salary cap work. I mean, there's only so much you can do to make the salary cap work year after year. Um, but he's a guy that can score 30 goals, and I think he does. I think he
Mm.
does go somewhere else. He's kind of a hired hand in my mind. I know he has stuck with a couple of clubs for the last few years, but he's a guy that could go pretty much anywhere. I could see him even in like a New Jersey situation, just as like a goal scorer. All right, Brett Pesce.
I think stay.
Yeah, I'd go stay.
I'm gonna go with Leaves. I think he goes. I think Carolina prioritizes signing Jaden Chatfield. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I've got some. I wouldn't call it inside information. But I follow this team. Carolina is going to let Pesce walk. Unfortunately, he's going to want north of $6 million a year. I think, and there's no way they can make that work in their salary cap structure. They've got Dmitry Orlov on the left side making over $7 million for one more year. They've got Kuznetsov only at like 3 point something, 3.9 ish, but that's still a lot of money for a guy that is either second line center or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jaden Chatfield steps up. Brendan Montour,
Stay.
sign or does he leave?
He'll sign.
He
I have a
stays.
good
Yeah, you
source
think
on
so?
this. I think he's leaving.
You think he's leaving?
Oh,
All right, where's he going?
Boston.
Boston. They
oh,
could
that'd
use
be
him.
great for them.
Because if a
Boston would
little
become
bit
a
during
tougher
the
team.
off season, if you take a look at their younger guys, I forget what his name. He's one of the sons of one of the broadcasters. Apparently, he's
Okay.
rumored to be leaving Boston, and then Montour will be that guy that Boston will try to pursue to fit in that spot. Again, on top of that rumor, Jake DeBrusk was his name.
Jake DeBrusk is definitely a name to remember, folks.
Yes.
I forgot about his name right quick, but Toronto might be looking to get rid of Ryan Reeves. Will need more grit, which I'm also hearing Montour to Toronto. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself there, but I think Montour walks.
Yeah, he's going to be sought after, and he's definitely like one of the tougher to play against defensemen
Yep.
in the NHL. How about this one, Tyler Toffoli?
Ooh, jeez.
That's really tough. I would think stay, but he's gonna have offers. It's gonna be tough. I'm gonna say stay though. He'll sign.
I'm
He'll
gonna go
sign.
with Daniel on that.
Yeah.
I think he stays.
Yeah, I do too. Honestly, I don't have. Look, I'm not an insider, but I think he signs. I think he's a high enough priority for a team like Winnipeg that why would you let him go?
Yeah, they're gonna want to keep him with Monahan, and it's a good line that they got
It
that
works. It
working.
works. Yeah. Brady Shea.
Stays.
Yeah, stays.
I think so too. I don't know why. I don't know how, but I think he stays.
I just
I
like
think
how he
he's going to
plays.
be. Oh man, there's honestly very few defensemen that play like Brady Shea. He is physical. He skates incredibly well. He just looks
Mhm.
good on the ice. But he is responsible quietly in his own end, and he just has this offensive flair. He jumps in on the play, the way he moves and stuff like that. It's fun to watch. I have a lot of fun watching Brady Shea play hockey, and I think he's a guy that kind of skates under the radar for a lot of folks, so like a lot of NHL fans. Unless you've been a fan and watched a lot of the Rangers or the Hurricanes, you might not think Brady Shea is potentially one of the better left-handed defensemen in the NHL.
I couldn't disagree.
Yeah, I think Carolina finds a way to get it done. Dmitry Orlov is great. He's not Brady Shea.
Yeah.
He's not Brady Shea. Although Dmitry Orlov was potentially brought in to replace Brady Shea, I think Carolina tries to move on and retain salary from Orlov and re-sign Shea before they let Shea walk.
Mhm.
The last one on my list, number 10, and it's no disrespect. This is a goat, honestly, of his own moment in time. His days might be a little bit past him, but he's still a stellar hockey player. Matthew Shane.
I think he
Stay.
moves.
He'll sign. Oh, okay.
I don't
All
get
right,
it.
so we have some disagreement. Daniel
Yeah.
says he moves on. Ethan says he stays. I'm going to break the tie. Matthew Shane moves on. Matthew Shane says one more payday.
I think with Matt
You
Duchene
think he'll get that?
leaving,
I think he will. I think he'll get good money this offseason. I think he did enough this year to prove. He's still playing hockey, right?
yeah, he's playing good
Yeah.
hockey too.
He's playing good hockey. I mean, like he's not just in the league. He's playing hockey right, like not right this second, but he's his team is still in the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier with the Dallas Stars, and I think me and Daniel were mentioning how Edmonton's just going to sneak by. I think with that sneak by, if it does happen, that's a look for Matt Duchene to get out because he's done all this work and he's been a part of the Ottawa team where they've done all that work and they just saw everything vanish. Um, I think he's going to leave. He's going to get a check somewhere else and then he's going to be rocking it. I don't know what team it will be. Any team will love to have Matt Duchene, of course, but I think he'll go to a cup contending team. If he resigns in Dallas, great, but he tends to move a lot, so I think he's moving.
Yeah, I agree with you, but for a totally different reason. Like when I look at Matthew Shane, I think lots of teams would like to have him. Dallas is consistently great. I
Hmm.
mean, Dallas has been in the playoffs for many years in a row, with maybe one or two exceptions. They're a good hockey club. They're well run.
100%.
They play the
Yeah.
right way. North south hockey. They grind it out. They don't lose board battles. They win face offs. They've got goaltending. From their blue line out, they've built the team. Whatever hockey talk you want to use. They're a good club.
Yeah.
I think Matt Duchene moves on because I don't think Dallas. I think he's replaceable in Dallas. I don't think he's the reason Dallas is doing great, but I think he's a
Mhm.
huge piece of the puzzle to maybe winning a Stanley Cup in a place like that. But I
Yeah.
think he just looks at it and he says, "This is my last chance to sign for a few years and get a good paycheck." I think he's done enough to prove it, probably enough to earn it. Guys get paid on the past more often than the future
Yeah.
at his age, and I think he'll get paid on this year and what he's done throughout his career as a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
So,
say just to finish with that,
yeah,
I think
please.
just seeing the run Dallas has had, I guess the reason why I say what I say, I can't see him wanting to walk from that, and I can't see Dallas not wanting that. So for me, that's why I see it as a re-sign. I'm not saying he's the essential piece, but he is a part of that machine, and
You're right.
it's a
Yeah, no, you're
well-oiled
definitely
machine.
I
right.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. No, you're
There's a
definitely. I
lot of
think you're
sides
spot
to
on.
this.
This is it.
Yeah.
We've got one more topic that I really want to dive into, and I'm excited about this. I know that Daniel's like jazzed, if I might use kind of a dated term there. I
Of
want to talk
course.
jerseys, logos, team nicknames, like what is going on. Like we kind of talked PWHL, so
Yeah.
like we're not
Yeah.
going to go back to that, but I definitely want to talk about Utah.
Hmm.
I think they're narrowing the teams down from what I've seen recently.
Yep.
Like the team names down, the nicknames, which means a logo is after that, and some colors is after that, and a jersey at some point, someday. Um, but more importantly, for at least some people, there's a new jersey contract taking over in the NHL, and there are some concerns about what that looks like. So before we get into that, let's talk about Utah.
Mhm.
Have you guys heard what some of the favorite names are for Utah?
I saw all the trademarks that they were putting in. Um, one of them being the Utah Ice was one of them, and another one was Fury, which is a nice one as well. I got Blizzard as another one, Mammoth as another option. If I was Utah, if I was the owner of this Utah team, there's three ones that come to my mind. Mainly, if you don't remember the Winnipeg Ice, I think the Utah Ice has a nice ring to it. And as well, you can use the logo as how the Winnipeg Ice did it. It was a Yeti. If you can work with a Yeti or some sort of mammoth, I think that will look awesome for Utah. That's what I think of it.
Yeah, I'll definitely chime in here. I know Yeti is the fan favorite so far, it seems. I think what I like about Yeti, playing into the whole fan favorite thing, is it's a four-letter name, and it kind of goes off the Jazz being a four-letter name. A lot of people seem to like that connection, oddly enough. And I like the choice of Blizzard having the double Z as a way to link it to the Jazz, kind of.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the same ownership group, Brian Smith. Uh, I would say one of those two would be the sweet spot for me. But I mean, if the fans are saying Yeti, my guess is they're going to run like a bracket,
Yeah,
and that's how they're going to choose that name. I would fully expect Yeti to be the name that comes out on top.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
There, I personally, I mean, I'm looking at the names that I guess the data, like what has been pulled the highest. So it's Yeti, Outlaws, Mammoth, and Mammoth and Blizzard are actually tied for third, and then Black Diamonds would be in fifth, right? There's no fourth place when you got to tie for third.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. None of them are like, oh, I can't wait to see what that jersey looks like, because one, the Outlaws is something that somebody would make on an NHL like EA Sports game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. I have no excitement for that. The Black Diamonds is like, I don't know. Are you gonna call your basketball team like the footballers or something? Like Black Diamond refers to ski slopes. It's just
Yeah.
wrong for a hockey team. And you have the Golden Knights. I don't think you want the Black Diamonds. It's
It just doesn't have a
I
good
don't
ring
know.
to it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, like Golden Knights.
Has a good
And we
ring.
called them the Knights. Let's be honest. We called them the Knights because
Yep.
he wanted to be called the Knights, then the Black Knights, and then all that. There's like they couldn't get the trademark or whatever. So Golden Knights and Golden works for Vegas. It really does
Hmm.
work for Vegas. They're a
Oh
unique
yeah.
situation. I don't think Black Diamonds. Utah's great skiing. It's just not right. Yeti's fine. Mammoth and Blizzard are fine. I actually like Blizzard the most, and the
Hmm.
reason this is weird. They're right beside Colorado. You have the Avalanche and the Blizzard. I think that's a cool hockey rivalry. Um,
Definitely.
so
Has a
what?
nice
I
ring
would
to
vote
it.
for Blizzard. I'm not saying they're probably going to go with Yeti. You're probably right. And they could do some cool stuff, like even on the Colorado, because this is going to be a rivalry, right? Colorado's jersey has the Bigfoot on it. From Bigfoot. Now Bigfoot and Yeti are, let's call them cousins. I don't know. Don't yell at me,
Yeah.
people who are into the supernatural. But it's kind of it's a cool rivalry thing if you got the Bigfoot on the jersey of the Avs, and then you've got the Yeti over there in Utah.
Lake Tahoe
It's
2.1.
exciting. I think this will be the best designed NHL team of all time. I really think that like Ryan Smith takes this serious, and I think he's going to get the colors, the logo. I think everything will be good, no matter what they pick. Um,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that some names aren't better than others.
Hmm.
I think he's taking the right approach of putting the name in the fans' hands, but the firm he went with is Doubleday and Cartwright. So they're pretty well renowned for sports identities. They have not worked on an NHL club, but I think best thing I can reference for work they've done in the NBA would be the Milwaukee Bucks.
Mm.
So the way the Bucks look now, that's their work.
Oh, that's
I,
that like modern, like yeah. I like that.
yeah, I'm a fan.
I think it Yeah, so I think if they go with Yeti, the only thing I
Yeah.
could see being conflictual is just the. I know Ryan Smith loves the idea of incorporating the mountains of Utah into this branding, and the Utah Jazz actually super play into that. Their 90s jerseys, which are easily the most popular ones, that's like their biggest seller, and they have an alternate now that plays into that. How do you not look like the Colorado Avalanche? Especially if you're even trying to mimic the Jazz's colors, but you got the mountains, Yeti is being suggested. I'm so curious how Doubleday and Cartwright approaches this without mimicking the Avalanche. Very
So
interested in how they approach color schemes and the imagery.
I'll throw some places out there. So like the toadstools, coral pink sand dunes, the wave, coyote butts or buttes, Kodachrome basin, what is it? Grosvenor Arc. I'm sorry, I have been to Utah. It's been a few years, back in 2013 when I was there. Beautiful, beautiful, especially southern Utah is nothing like what the Colorado landscape is. Now, yes, in Salt Lake City, the landscape does look a lot like what you get in Denver,
Yeah.
but they could go with something totally different and have kind of like a. They're not going to do the Kachina thing exactly, but I think there's some room there to maybe play off of the identity a little bit and do some of the funky, like if you've seen those kind of like huge orange like like pillars in the desert. That's Utah, So they could
Yeah.
do some cool stuff that is not necessarily just peaks that is Salt Lake City. They could also, try to play with maybe less sharp angles. Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they do more plateaus or things. I think there's definitely a ton of room. And the bigger question is, can Fanatics make whatever it is look good when the jersey comes out? Because a lot of people are worried that Fanatics can't make anything look good. So I'm going to change topics a little bit, but talk to us about Fanatics, the NHL contract. I mean, we've just kind of watched a bit of a disaster in the MLB, and I think that's what a lot of people are referencing right now when they're talking about Fanatics taking over the NHL contract.
Yeah, so I think definitely a lot to dissect because the deal definitely does get muddied by the fact that they were doing those breakaway jerseys, which is kind of like the lowest tier of NHL jersey right now. And they also had what happened in MLB. So with MLB, what I can definitely clarify there is what happened is Fanatics bought Majestic uh, sometime late 2010s. Nike essentially partnered with them, but Nike is really the one who called the shots in terms of materials and that. Fanatics is just the manufacturer. So I think here's what I would expect going into the NHL deal. It is the first time their name is going to be on the back of the jersey. But yeah, they have experience doing pro league stuff. They've even helped the NFL with NFL jerseys. Um, they have bought the facilities that Adidas was using in Montreal for the on ice product. My understanding is the mid tier product fans would receive. It's essentially the same thing. So even in terms of the embroidery, there was a style guide that was leaked, and it almost sounds to a T what the Adidas Prime Green jerseys were. So I'm almost saying with confidence, expect the same results that Adidas brought for the past few seasons for the on ice and the mid tier product. those should be unaltered. I think what gets muddied and all that is that the breakaway jerseys, that was not what I would call a great product, and I think that harmed
But it was a great price.
reputation. Yeah, it's all about price, and I mean, they did some interesting things, like the crests are more foldable, things like that, but yeah, that's enough to hurt reputation, but I think fans are gonna be surprised by what Fanatics offers, and actually, there's a very key thing that they're doing for fans. The pro models, the ones that are seen on the ice, they're what a lot of people call them the Made in Canada jerseys. Those are actually gonna be available easily to
I
consumers.
heard that. But it's been years since you've been able to buy. Now, I know back in the Coho days and I think CCM days, you could purchase those made in Canada pro jerseys with the straps and everything. But it's been a long time.
Yeah, so, like, right now, a lot of the time you have to go directly through team stores or even auctions, etcetera, just to kinda get that Adidas Made in Canada model.
Right. Like I think the Carolina
So
Hurricanes at their pro shop sell some of those jerseys at the Carolina pro shop. Like so it's their most expensive multi-$100 dollar USD jerseys. So like you're paying 350 American for this Hurricanes jersey type of thing. But it is that NHL like quality to wear on the ice during an NHL game.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think it's actually gonna be great that they're opening it up to being available. I think pretty much as long as you're a local mom and pop shop, you'll be able to actually order these jerseys in, as well as more accessible online. Because of course, Fanatics runs almost all the stores. You're gonna be able to buy that jersey without issue. I think that's a great move, and I think the fact they're gonna be maintaining the quality that we've kinda seen with those Adidas Prime Green jerseys, that's great because Adidas was doing awesome work. I'd argue probably the best jerseys we've seen since CCM handled things. Um, I think
Yeah, those Reebok
things
days were kind of boring.
yeah, I think they took risks that weren't necessarily great. The fan jerseys were interesting. I know a lot of people weren't a fan of the jock tags, and there wasn't really a great in between option.
Yeah, like I
Um,
actually have a Jeff Skinner Hurricanes jersey. I call it the Candy Striper jersey because it was the year that Reebok redesigned. The Hurricanes had no black on their home jersey; it was just red and white. The last
yes,
topic? Yeah, well, we're almost done. We're gonna wrap it up here on the last one.
yeah, yeah. I think what to expect in the future is going to be different. I know around 3 years in, I think they're going to look at exploring at making their own uniform template and trying different
Okay.
technology, but it seems like they're treading carefully.
So no redesigns for next season. We should expect the same templates for teams. Maybe one or two teams does a redesign um, on their own or whatever. But we shouldn't expect like a Reebok Edge league wide redesign.
Yeah, don't expect anything like that. I know it was rumored Boston might be wearing the anniversary jerseys, but just in their standard colors. But it actually looks like Boston's just going back to the jerseys they wore the season
Kind of
prior.
unfortunate. I'm not a Boston fan by any means, and I invite every Boston fan to please come at me. We can fight. Um, those jerseys were sharp. The gold was awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty clean
Oh,
jersey.
the logo treatment, I think, for me was the absolute peak of it.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous.
Unique critiques to the rest of it, but the logo treatment was a real winner. So it is a shame to see some of those things going away, but I think the one thing that does seem to be happening that wasn't expected, there are going to be some third jerseys.
Okay.
That was not expected. And that actually was something that was cut when Reebok took over and Adidas took over. That
Well, a lot of
won't be
teams
the
now
case
like to
here.
run three jerseys. Like again, Carolina. I'm sorry, but they run three jerseys. Like sometimes four.
So, and that's the thing, but actually, in previous transitions, teams that ran three, when the manufacturer would take over, they actually paused the third jersey programs.
Right.
This would be the first time in a long time that didn't actually happen. So it's interesting to see there are a few teams going forward with that. And it looks like a lot of the ones that are just carrying over from the prior season, nothing really new from the
Okay.
guide I took a peek at. I pretty much looked they have a whole season guide top to bottom.
Right.
It
Well,
looks like
we're
it's
gonna
pretty
keep
standard
monitoring.
fare, except for the third jerseys. I think that is a surprise, but it might play into the fact that they really are just going to be doing what Adidas was doing, but with different logos slapped on. I'd almost say that is the expectation going in.
Okay. Well, look, you know what? That's encouraging. Most of what I've, obviously the initial reactions, everybody's like, "Oh no, the jerseys are gonna suck." So I'm happy to hear that. Um,
Yeah,
let's wrap it up at that. I think
I
we've
think
covered
it's
a ton
fair.
of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to promise
100%.
all of our devoted fans that this is we're always going to go this long, but
Yeah.
episode one, I think there was a lot to cover. We really wanted to dive in, kind of cover everything from women's hockey down to what does Fanatics do next year and years future, and everything between, including Jake Ensel being the number one UFA of the offseason, new coaches in Toronto and Seattle, Winnipeg, New Jersey, and of course, we gave our predictions for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Thanks everybody for joining us for
This was
giving us a
great.
listen. Ethan's
Yeah,
going to give
thanks
a little bit of
everyone.
information, I think, on the way out here, and yeah, thank you everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. If it's from Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube, there's gonna be trying to be posted everywhere as much as we can. If you came from TikTok, hi, thanks for watching the full thing here. But thank you guys for all tuning in. We're going to be doing these podcasts as bits and pieces. We're going to gather a lot of information, make sure we're broadcasting the right amount of proper information. We're not just going to go out there and figure one little rumor. We're going to put it up on a podcast. We're going to try our best to go deep dives into this, get as much info as we can, so it makes sense to listen to it rather than a whole bunch of gibberish. So I thank you guys
Yeah.
for all
Our
paying
goal is to
attention.
not be clickbait. We want to be here and have a conversation. If you guys
Yeah,
have stuff to add, please reach out. Let us know what your thoughts are wherever you're listening or on social media. You're going to find that stuff tagged wherever you find us.
exactly. We are all three friends, all former employees of one other company we won't mention for copyright and trademark preventions, but we all have similar pasts. We all have something to bring up, and we just have a good bond. So thank you for listening, and we'd like to have you guys in our conversation in the comments. So see you guys for next time.